Good evening. I'm David Watts Jr. Welcome to Town Administrator's Report. And with me is our Town Administrator, Steve Maio. Steve, how are you?
Good. How are you, David?
Doing well, doing well. We're slowly moving towards spring.
I'm thinking it's been, what is today or yesterday was the first day of spring, and it's colder than it was 3 weeks ago. So.
And they're talking about snow for Saturday.
Yeah, but there's going to be nothing. No plows are going out. We're not going to spend any of that budget.
Another winter of saving snow money.
Yeah, well, we had a lot of, some icing events, and we did have a few things. And, you still do need to keep the roads safe. And, we do have a chance to, fill up the salt sheds and get them ready for next year. Next year being the operative word. next winter season.
Yep. But this is going to be our annual first of two shows on upcoming annual town meeting, which has been decided. The first session will be Monday, April 29th at 7 p.m.
At the Galvin Middle School.
Yep, in Veterans Memorial Auditorium.
Yep.
And so let's start off from the top. What are we looking at? Any surprises in the budget this year? I know it's still in process.
We're still going through the budget. I think the budget is progressing, pretty well. Wakefield does go through each department by department. It goes to the town council. It goes to the finance committee. So there is a very robust budget process that really starts. We start going over individual departments or individual areas of the budget in January.
Mm-hmm.
So, we kind of set the whole budget earlier than that, but in January we go through individual ones. And I think that's part of our success, fiscal success, is that we do look at every place individually. But to answer your question, I think that, there are some, we are in an area of rising inflation.
Mm-hmm.
And so things cost more. It is hard to hire personnel across the board right now, which is amazing to me, but particularly in public safety, particularly in police and fire.
Yep.
It's hard to hire personnel.
Yep.
We are completely weaning ourselves off of any ARPA funds that we used to help bridge the gap. In
Surprised there's any of that left.
It
seems like it's been a long time.
Yeah, there's still a lot in for capital.
Yeah,
for capital items that the town council is looking at, but you really don't want to use ARPA funds if you can help it for, recurring costs, because they're not recurring.
Right.
So weaning off of that. We did have a SAFER grant through our fire department, which was federal government was paying for really 4 firefighters.
Mm-hmm.
$300,000 a year for 3 years, and that's gone. So we need firefighters.
Right.
Town is growing, and we have we have so many calls. The fire department now, probably 4,000 a year calls. A lot of medical, but we've had some fires too. I mean, we want them. We need them, right? We want them there when we need them.
Right. Absolutely.
And state aid is basically flat from last year. Basically, not a big bump in state aid to help us out.
The state itself is looking at somewhat of a belt tightening as well.
The state itself isn't hitting its targets, and they're spending money on a lot of other items, not necessarily local aid.
Right.
So that being said, I'm hoping that anywhere the budget will increase, 4 or 5% in that area. For these reasons, I think the school department is going to come in with all of their needs that they have, particularly somewhat of a rising enrollment, and a loss of federal funds that were covering some things, and still really recovering from the COVID years of education. I think the school is coming in around 5.5%. That's our biggest budget. Healthcare costs are going up 19% across the state. So you know what? Not a lot of good news, but I think as we're going through it, I think we'll be okay. We've with the finance committee and the town council, I think we've planned well. So I think we'll be all right.
And of course, one of the items, coming up on the uh, warrant for town meeting are bond payments. Where are we
Yes.
with our bond rating? Are we still?
We are still AAA.
Yep.
We are still AAA. That has meant a lot of money to the taxpayer. So what that means is that we're the highest rated, municipalities get rated by, it's Standard & Poor's. Standard & Poor's rates the town of Wakefield, and we are still AAA, the highest bond rating you can get, the highest quality credit, which means when we go out to borrow, we will borrow at lower rates. Unfortunately, rates are higher than they were a few years ago. You know that from if you've tried to refinance your mortgage or bought a house.
Well, the Fed has been raising
Fed has been
rates
raising,
for
and that's
almost
part of
2
it.
years now. Yeah.
I'm hoping that there is some easing by the Fed over the next over the summer and fall, because we are going out for a big bond borrowing for the high school. As we mentioned at town meeting when we put in the high school, we presented the high school project. There was no sense in borrowing all the money up front at a higher rate than rates are now even, and not using it because you're not going to use a lot of it in the beginning.
Right.
So that's not only does the bond rating agencies look poorly on you for doing it, it also means the taxpayer is paying more in a shock and the money's just sitting around.
Sure.
So we are going to go out for more in September, I think. However, this money right here in what will be Article 3 on the warrant is to pay our existing bonds, including the Galvin School, including the public safety building, including monies that we borrowed for the Walton School. So there is some, there are amounts that we owe.
Yeah.
That we're going to pay through here, and but I think that's pretty standard and pretty benign. Actually.
Are any of those projects that you mentioned coming close to being paid for?
Well, the Walton School has a few years to go because we just did the addition there.
Yeah.
The public safety building is public safety building 2.
Yep.
Right, which
The
is
police side,
police
yep.
side, which just got done now. There are probably a few other purchases that are starting to ratchet down a little bit, but I think we'll remain, our bond payments will remain right around $2 million a year in that
Okay.
area over the next few years.
Okay.
We're always looking for the next project.
Of course. Of course. Well, the high school is going to keep everyone occupied for
Oh, yeah.
several years.
Yes.
Supplemental budget. That's not one that we often
It's something
see.
that we've seen for the last few years. We have had in some of our departments, particularly police and fire, that need a minimum manning. It's not like, you can call in sick today and they're not going to replace you. You have your sick day. We need police and fire there if something happens. So overtime runs up. And if you have a few injuries, and which happens
Right.
in these high level, in these high active jobs, we may need to, we go over in overtime. So for the past few years, we have put a supplemental budget in at town meeting, clear the slate for the year, and then we don't run into the fact where we would use it out of the reserve fund, which we have, in case an emergency does occur at the end of the year that we don't know about. And if that happens, then we're in much better shape by doing it this way. And if we don't use all of the reserve fund money, it just rolls back to the general fund anyway. So it's a wash.
Right.
So we have done that the last few years. I usually try to put it in the consent agenda.
Get it out of the way real quick.
Get it out of the way, yeah.
Yeah. Just for new voters, the consent agenda is a fairly new approach that we've been using at
Right.
town meeting.
To Wakefield.
Wakefield.
It's well used for years in many communities.
Yeah.
And what the consent agenda means, there are certain articles that come to town meeting every year that are going to pass and I go back, like people, the town council in particular, make fun of me. For the last 16 years, I have a binder,
Yeah.
of every article at town meeting, and written what people have, the comments from the crowd. And on some of these, no one has said a word on it, for 15 years. So, so there's a few articles, and there's 4 or 5 of them that we're going to say, hey, let's all take this in a package.
Yeah.
Let's vote them all up or down as once. If one person objects,
Yeah.
we just pull it out and we'll hear it on its own. So it is a time saver, and we're going to need a time saver this town meeting. Kind of gets us through some of the normal rote areas that just make it a little bit easier
Right.
to get through town meeting.
The things that are standard each year that
Right.
are just going to pass without
Right.
comment.
Exactly.
Um,
But if someone objects, we'll pull it out.
of course.
Yeah.
Of course. Capital outlay is always the one that is a big subject for some voters.
It is a big subject, and because we have almost an unlimited number of capital needs. That you can see everything. There's a lot of things that we want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Years ago, I think we were spending $250,000 a year on capital. Not a good recipe for success. We've slowly ratcheted that up over the years, building that in. This year's capital budget outlay will be around $2 million. And we have a capital planning committee that has been working again since January, vetting all of the requests that come in, meeting with the departments, going through it. Not everybody's happy, but it's just like when you look at your own household. I say to people, you can't do everything. You can't
Right.
do, you can't reside the house and refinish all the floors in the same year. Maybe you can't do that. So we there'll be about $2 million, and capital items are items from, repointing and fixing the library front steps,
Right.
to a roof on a building. The elevator at Town Hall, for instance, that
Yep.
elevator is on its last legs.
Seriously.
We need to the controls are anyway. That is a must, needs to be done because, that is a building where people come in,
Right.
need to get to multiple floors, and they need to have a way to do that to be in compliance with ADA.
ADA. Sure.
So,
Sure.
that's part of the capital project.
Sure.
And by putting all these together, great capital planning committee, they meet and they vet every item that they come by, and we're much better than we were years ago. But there are people that are not, their needs aren't always answered every year.
There's always going to be someone who
Yeah.
isn't happy.
Exactly.
It's just one I saw on the list, and by the way, this list of articles that is the set of articles
That
for
is,
town
yes,
meeting.
the
That's-
warrant is locked. I guess if anything crazy happened that we had to do, town council could technically vote to open the warrant and then to close it.
Yeah.
That has happened in years ago, but I don't see that, we don't see it because it'd be an
Right.
emergency something.
So now it's just working with the budgets and the details and that sort of thing.
Exactly.
One that looked interesting there, MGLD pilot.
Yes, that is that's a standard article. That'll probably go on the consent agenda too. The light department does not pay taxes to the town of Wakefield.
Right.
They do, however, make a payment in lieu of taxes, or a pilot program. Just like, hospitals pay that, universities and colleges pay that to the cities they're in. So every year, the light department does, pay to the town. It's close to $1 million now. And that is one of those standard articles that comes in. It goes up a little bit every year. Candidly, not as much as I'd like, but that's okay. For my friends at the light department, they know we do a lot of work together, so it's all right.
But especially for new residents who, it's funny. I'll get calls quite often from power companies saying, "Hey, we can save you money."
Yeah, no, you
Hey,
can't.
no, you can't.
No, you can't. Yeah.
Why? Well, because we have our own in town, and
Yeah.
you can't even come into town.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there. But but the MGLD does so much that the big companies aren't able to do, and we're very fortunate that way.
Well, I mean, if if you've ever watched, on the, of course you see on the news there's a snowstorm or a windstorm or what have you, and you see certain communities that are out for, 3 days.
Yeah.
It's going to be 3 days before everyone gets their power. The town manager in Situate is a good friend of mine, and they seem to be always on the news for this. And everyone in town has a generator because of that. And they are serviced by, I think it's National Grid. In Wakefield, we do have our own municipal light gas department. And I would say many of the employees live in town, know the town very well from being in it every day, because they're not going all over the place like maybe a National Grid would be. And I think if you're out of power for an hour in Wakefield, that's a long time. That's a long time on on what they really
Absolutely.
do, because it's usually like
If something
that.
happens.
Yeah, if even something happens. And the other thing that our light department does do is they do a trimming exercise.
Yep.
Where every year another quarter of the town gets done, and they just keep rotating it.
Yep.
To try to make sure that there aren't a lot of branches over the wires, and we're careful with new plantings, that we're planting the trees on the
Right.
power side of the street for those that have overhead. So there's a great synergy there, and and we get, and the bills are reasonable as anybody else.
Much more reasonable than a lot of people around us.
Yeah.
But the incident that comes to mind to show just how much value MGLD brings to the town, that spring storm we had a few years ago that decimated the north end of town.
Yeah, that microburst
spared
came
downtown,
right through. Yeah,
and then decimated Greenwood.
yeah,
And within 9 hours, they had everything back up and running.
yeah. That's amazing.
Within 9 hours.
Yeah, and like I said, you have communities that are going days
Yeah.
waiting. And
Absolutely.
And really with no idea when it's going to be done, because there's no one they can get to.
Right.
You know,
Right.
so it's no, we are very fortunate.
Absolutely. Police and fire indemnification is another standard annual.
Right, and this is because of the nature of police and fire's job descriptions. Okay,
Yep.
they are not covered under workers' comp. Okay,
Okay.
the workers' comp, which is an insurance, which would pay for, I guess, would pay for me if in the line of the duty I fell down the stairs and broke my leg and couldn't work. Police and fire, things can happen. So what we actually do is we actually pay it separately, and then sometimes we have to, the bill comes in from the with hospitals and what have you, which we then negotiate down on our
Yep.
own. So we set up a fund for that, and every year or 2 years we need to replenish it. So that's a fairly common item at town meeting, but that's why it happens.
Another common item every year is eminent domain.
Yes, this is $1. We
Yep.
designate $1 at town meeting. So if we ever had to pay for more, it would have to have a separate article. Or if it was something that was a little bit grander, we would have
Yep.
to pay more. And really, what this is sometimes a street is going in, or they're widening a sidewalk, and there's a little corner that nobody uses, that is not owned by the town. The town could use this article here to take that little sliver by eminent domain to finish the public works project.
So if they're putting in a sidewalk and somebody has a yard that goes out to the street
Right,
because the sidewalk has never been put in there,
right.
then the eminent
If
domain
if
would be.
if we're using a portion that is owned by the private owner and not the town. A lot of
Okay.
people have yards that go out to the street,
Right.
which is within the street right of way. So the sidewalk they're using town property to begin with. A lot
That's
of
where I
that
was
happens.
going with this.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
because a lot of people I don't think understand that fine distinction
Yeah,
that, yes, you have grass going out to the edge of the street, but 10 feet or so is not yours.
it's not yours. So there may be a sidewalk there someday. So but I would say that we rarely, if ever, use that. Normally, if there is, normally when we have to do a taking, it is a separate article. It's a larger process, and usually it's not $1 that's going to do it anyway.
Right.
So,
Right.
yeah, I've never seen that dollar go anywhere. Right? I don't think in my 16 years.
The other one we get each year is trash and recycling.
Yeah, trash and recycling. It's those costs are going up, particularly because it's very hard to get rid of waste
Yep.
today.
Yep.
That's why the programs that we run through for composting, with our partnership with Black Earth, takes
Yep.
a lot out of the waste stream. Cardboard recycling, we're actually making a little bit of money on cardboard now.
Really?
Yeah. So actually, we'll take anybody's clean cardboard
Yep.
because we're making a little money. Scrap metal is another one. We'll take anybody's scrap metal because we're making a little bit of money on that too.
Yep.
So it's we're almost going back to years ago, kind of playing a little bit as commodities brokers with some of this stuff, which we did years ago. But
What about the plastic and the cans that people put out?
yeah, those are it is better in recycling. It's better for the planet, and it's probably a little bit better for our cost in
Yep.
getting rid of it. But I will tell you that where we used to maybe make a little bit of money on that years ago, not anymore. It's just we're paying to get rid of it.
Really?
Yeah. Market has changed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's probably about a $2 million article.
Interesting. We have two contracts that have been
They're under
negotiated.
negotiation.
They're still
They're
under
still under
negotiation.
negotiation. I always put them on the town warrant
Yeah.
because if we're fortunate enough to settle them, after the warrant needed to be posted, but before town meeting, I'd hate to say to the unions that bargained in good faith, hey, we got to wait till November
Right.
to take care of this. So if we haven't settled it, okay, that's fine. But I like to have it on there just in case.
And then if nothing has happened,
They're
then
just indefinitely postponed.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Which, especially for new people in town, because there have been different demonstrations in Greenwood and other schools, the teachers are still negotiating their contract.
I believe the teachers are just needing to vote on it, but I think I'm hoping that it's pretty much settled.
But that's all done through the school department.
Through the school
That
department
doesn't-
budget.
That does
not come to town meeting, no.
Okay.
It used to, years and years ago. I think we
Absolutely.
can recall it going,
Absolutely.
but in the last, I don't know, 20, 30 years, it hasn't.
Water main improvements.
Yeah, this is an ongoing, the infrastructure, and I think you see this in almost every community around here. You hear about water main breaks and things
Yep.
like that. A lot of this water piping was put in years and years ago. This is, a borrowing through the, through the water and sewer account that we need to replace aging infrastructure in different areas around town. And if you see them, if your street is in need to be paved, and many of them are, chances are the water service and gas service, underground electric service, if you have it,
Yep.
drainage,
Yep.
is going to be done before, because there's nothing worse for a newly paved road than a utility cut. Just decimates the life of that road.
Because you're back to where you were
You're back
before
to,
you.
exactly. So that was the items that needed to happen, like on Salem Street.
Yep.
I think you will see Salem Street from Daniels Road down to Lowell.
Yep.
Be paved probably within the next month or so. I'm hoping. I think I put DPW on notice. I heard it was going to be in the beginning of April. So now you've been challenged, this being March 21st. Yeah. So, but you have to take care of the infrastructure first.
Right.
And, that's a big issue. We've had water breaks. They're awful to have.
Yep.
That's takes a long time. And, when you're doing it under an emergency, it's in the dead of winter when it's harder to get in that hole and make things work. So, yeah, it's
Well, they're doing the high-pressure gas lines down Oak Street right now,
yes, yes,
which they did on Greenwood Avenue where I live several years ago.
yeah.
So they're
Very
finally,
important to have that done.
yeah.
Very important to replace that old infrastructure. What's the alternative?
And actually, that brings up, one question for, Green Street has had water main breaks twice in a fairly short amount of time. And it's been pretty dodgy streets since.
That's in here too.
Okay, because there's piping now down, is that to replace
I think
Green
that, yeah,
Street?
there's some of that needs to be replaced. Yes,
Because they staged piping
yes.
in the neighborhood some weeks
Yes.
ago, and
Yep.
so that'll be good.
That'll be excellent. Yeah,
That'll be good. Just don't do it until Oak Street is done.
yeah.
One that I found very interesting, and I think people will wonder what this is all about. Fueling design of pumps at the DPW garage.
Yeah. So the DPW garage on North Ave does have, I think it's probably two gasoline and one, and I think maybe one diesel, gas pump, for lack of
Yeah.
a better word.
Yeah.
Those are very old, ancient. We are looking, and through a design process, looking to see, is that the best place to keep them? Either on that site or elsewhere.
Yeah.
On that site, is they're right in the middle of the site. Is that the best place for it? Because it makes it difficult to get in and out of the bays sometimes. So we are going to do some design work on that, and before we put them in, to see where's the best spot to do it. And so we'll be back later with money to actually do the work.
Yep.
But that's very important too, because those are what's hard. It's we have police and fire vehicles that need to get
Yep.
fueled, and we actually we buy in bulk, we make money, all those things. It's better for us. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think we'll cut off at that point. We still have a bunch of things to talk about, which we'll hold for the next show.
Right.
But just to remind everyone, town meeting starts on Monday, April 29th at 7 p.m. in the Veterans Memorial Auditorium at the Galvin School. And they will go Monday and Thursday until completion.
Until completion, we have 22 articles.
23.
23 articles, I'm sorry.
Yep.
9 of which are citizen petitions.
Yep.
I don't remember a time when we had this many articles. I'll have to go back into the Wayback Machine and look about that. But it is a lot of, it is a number of articles. And I think we'll probably, at our next show, talk about some of the ones that will probably have more interesting debate. I mean, there's only so much you can say about a budget or about a
Right.
a water,
Right.
a gas pump, or a bond payment.
Right.
It's pretty
Right.
dry stuff.
And also, just to look ahead, because we were talking about this before we went on the air, if we need to have overflow, the overflow will be in the cafeteria across the
Across
hall.
the hall, it has a Zoom, a video setup.
Yep.
And ability to hear
Yep.
what's going on.
And also an audio setup for commentary
Exactly.
if they need it.
And every vote will be counted.
Yep.
So, it'll be, we always have our predictions. We're going to do our predictions now. How many nights are you going to hold?
No, let's go.
Okay. I am hopeful 3 nights.
I'm saying 4.
Okay.
I'm looking at some of the things we've talked about, and I think especially some of the items we'll be talking about in the next show may slow things down a little bit. So I'm saying 4,
Yeah.
but we'll see where we are next month.
We'll see where we are next month. But it is Monday. It will most likely be, because you can adjourn to, the body could adjourn to another time,
Yep.
obviously.
Yep.
Or continue to another time, I should say. Monday, Thursday, Monday, Thursday.
Yep.
So that is normally what happens. But the thing about open town meeting is it's open, right? Democracy at its purest form.
Absolutely. So I encourage voters to come down,
Yep.
participate, and really kind of make the decisions that the town needs to make for the fiscal year coming up
Yeah.
beginning July 1st.
July 1, yeah.
Yep. Well, thank you for joining us. We'll see you next month.
Thank you.